Hi everyone, it's John. Welcome back to my channel. It is September 8th, 2021, and over this past several months, I've collected, I guess about 40 or 45 books that I haven't shown on this channel, so I wanted to take the opportunity to make a video and talk just a very, very little bit about each one. Since there are so many, I really just want to kind of show the show the cover, the title, and the author, and not get too bogged down into details like I have in the past. I think that might turn some people off, and it also ends up in ridiculously long videos. And this one will probably be long enough anyway. But I just wanted to say, where they come from. Probably about 2/3 or so are from Book Outlet. I went to a library book sale a couple of weekends ago. Pretty disappointing one where I only got 4 or 5 books. And both of the libraries that I go to locally have annexes that sell books that have been pulled from circulation. So that's probably another 10 or 15 of what I'm going to show you. So I just really want to sort of fly through these and show them to you. Peg actually is responsible for these. For some reason, you can't find, at least in my experiences, you can't find a lot of Solzhenitsyn translated into English unabridged, but I found these. This looks to be possibly a new translation from Harper Perennial Modern Classics. These volumes 1, 2, and 3 of the Gulag Archipelago, with introductions by Anne Applebaum, the great Russianist and Sovietist, a few of whose books I've actually reviewed on this channel. So, Peg, if you're open to reading this, or if anyone else is, later this year, next year, I would be very interested in plowing through at least one volume and maybe all 3. Speaking of trilogies, this is The Cultural Revolution by Frank Dickauter. This is People's Revolution, 1962 to 1976. This is part of another trilogy. This is a part of I forgot which one he published first, but he published 3 books about basically Mao's China from the Revolution, 1949, through the 70s. And this is one of those books. I've read another one of the others, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and remember really enjoying it. So I'll be on the lookout for the other one at Book Outlet. This is a book on the Balkans, 1804 to 2011, by Misha Glenny. This is an older book, but has been recently reprinted by Simon & Schuster. Originally came out in the 40s or 50s, I think. This is a short history of Chinese philosophy by Feng Yulan. A systematic account of Chinese thought from its origins to the present day. I took a class in, what was the name of the class? Was it Asian philosophies, where we basically covered some Asian religion, but also legalism and things like that, and never really had a chance to read too much more into the topic. This is a library annex find, I think for $1 or so. Never read John le Carré, so this is Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. Probably his among his 2 or 3 best known best recognized novels. This is one of Salman Rushdie's latest, if not his latest. I don't know. He might have. Yeah, he came out with the Quixote book a couple of years ago. This is the one before Quixote, I think. This is Joseph Anton, which is sort of like a thinly veiled autobiography, I think. Here is Karl Marx, His Life and Thought by David McClellan. This is supposed to be a pretty serviceable intellectual biography. So not only his life and his life events, but also sort of an analysis of what he thought, why he thought it, his influences and stuff like that. My favorite kind of biography in history of ideas. And every once in a while, I'll find something that's really, really excellent. And this is one of those. This is from Oxford University Press, one of those big, really, really sort of meaty biographies of royal figures that they do. This is their biography. This is Alfred Smith's. I don't know it in England if you would pronounce that Smith or Smythe. If you do know, let me know. His biography of King Alfred the Great. This is, I've heard that this is maybe the biography of Alfred to have, but that it is a bit on the dry side. And I can certainly imagine that being the case from just casually flipping through it. But it might be something I want to read eventually. All right, which pile next? John Kenneth Galbraith, I think, led a fairly long life, and in his later years wrote several volumes of memoirs, one of which is this, A Life in Our Times. It's the only volume I found. This was published 1981. There's Galbraith in the early 1980s. Here is Andrew Delbanco, who is a writer I've come to trust and be a little bit interested in because he's a really good 19th century Americanist. And I think he wrote a book about Moby Dick, or Melville writing Moby Dick or something 10, 15 years ago that I remember looking at and really enjoying. This is The War Before the War, Fugitive Slaves and the Struggle for America's Soul from the Revolution to the Civil War by Andrew Delbanco. And another late 19th, early 20th century life that I saw on Book Outlet that I heard was a really, really great life is Ida, A Sword Among Lions by Paula J. Giddings. This is Ida B. Wells and the Campaign Against Lynching, which of course is one of the handful of things that she was known for. But she did reportage on a number of things, but Ida B. Wells was largely responsible for getting lynching outlawed in large parts of the country through her work. And she is just a fascinating woman who led a fascinating life. It is a big, thorough biography, and I'll really, really enjoy getting to learn even more about her. These are some of the later Essays. I don't know when this was put out. Because I think Tony Jute has been. Okay. This was put out in 2015, I guess. Tony Jute, I think, died about 8 or 10 years ago. But these are, this is When the Facts Change. Essays from 1995 to 2010. They are book reviews, occasional pieces for things like the New Yorker, the New York Review of Books, the London Review of Books, things like think pieces, etc. This is The Ornament of the World, How Muslims, Jews, and Christians Created a Culture of Tolerance in Medieval Spain by Maria Rosa Minocal. I have, of late, for whatever reason, sort of developed an interest in medieval Spain. Largely because of the fact that it was such a wonderfully multicultural place where so many parts of Spain tended to be more, well, less intercultural. the, the existence of Muslims there made it a really, really fascinating cultural, culinary, historical, architecturally interesting, musically interesting place to be at the time. And of course, that presence has persisted through the centuries. I found a 2-volume set of Paris Review interviews at the library. This is, start with volume 1 first. Paris Review interviews of Dorothy Parker, Truman Capote, Ernest Hemingway, T.S. Eliot, Saul Bellow, Borges, Kurt Vonnegut, James Cain, Rebecca West, Elizabeth Bishop, Robert Stone, Robert Gottlieb, Richard Price, Billy Wilder, Jack Gilbert, and Joan Didion. And here's volume 2 in blue. And this has interviews of Graham Greene, James Thurber, William Faulkner, Robert Lowell, Isaac Bashevis Singer, Eudora Welty, John Gardner, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Philip Larkin, James Baldwin, William Gaddis, Harold Bloom, Toni Morrison, Alice Munro, Peter Carey, and Stephen King. Someone else I've never read who recently passed away, recently, maybe 5 years ago, at a very, very old age. This is Herman Wouk's War and Remembrance. One of the great epics of World War II. Didn't know much of anything about the book, and still don't, to be honest with you. But everyone says that if you can read 2, 3, 5 World War II novels, that this is one of the ones that's really, really worth your time. So it would be my first exposure to Wouk, and I'll eventually get, it's 1,000 pages, so who knows when that will happen. But this is, I don't know when this was written. This is 2004, from 2004. It's almost 20 years old. This is Thomas Asbridge's. Probably know his name from writing quite a bit about the Crusades. This is the First Crusade, A New History, the roots of conflict between Christianity and Islam. So I don't know how much of the book is actually dedicated to the Crusade and how much is dedicated to the sort of historical tensions between Christianity and Islam, but it's not overly long, 330 pages or so. So I picked that up too. Let me scoot this over. We're a little halfway through or so. I think we're making good time. This is The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. Iris Chang, it's really a shame that she took her own life. I think she suffered from depression for a long time, but to be honest with you, that's not too big a surprise when you write about things like the rape of Nanking. I've read other things about the events that happened, and it's chilling, horrifying history about what happened to the residents of the city. But this is a book about that particular episode in Nanking. This is a book by Richard Pipes, the great Russianist, Russia under the old regime. That is under the czars, I guess. Never really was a huge fan of anything I read by this writer, but I saw this at the library sale for $1 or $1.50 and have never read it. So I picked it up. This is John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. This is a little book of short stories by Catherine Mansfield, put out by Penguin. Catherine Mansfield's The Garden Party and Other Stories. This is a book that I almost never see. In fact, it might have just been the second or third time in my entire life that I've seen it. Not exactly my favorite edition, Wordsworth Classics, but so glad to actually own the book. This is Trilby by George de Moyer, who you probably recognize the last name. That is Daphne du Maurier's grandfather. Who was, I don't want to call him a famous novelist, but probably a second or third rate Victorian English novelist. But where, by the way, we get the term Svengali from. This novel is where we get that word for a sort of a lecherous, deceitful person. Another John le Carré novel. I haven't really read a lot of mystery, thriller, international spy kind of stuff, but I picked this up when I picked up the other one. This is a George Smiley novel. This is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. This is an NYRB classic, which you can very occasionally find on Book Outlet. This is the great Peter Brooks's Balzac's Lives, wherein he basically just spins a bunch of lessons from Balzac's novels and sort of retells the lessons, discusses the characters, etc. Two books by a really interesting popular historian, Alison Weir, who I have reviewed on my channel before. This is The Princes in the Tower, the story of the two young men who were imprisoned in the Tower of London, supposedly killed by Richard III. And this is also by Alison Weir, the children, not the wives of, but the children of Henry VIII. Next is three novels. Next are three novels by the same novelist. It's Martin Amis. I think I read all of one thing by Martin Amis. It was a book called Experience, and I must have been in high school when I read it and remember kind of liking it. So um, this is London Fields. He at one point had all of his books put out by Vintage International, so they're these things. This is London Fields. This is Other People, and this is Time's Arrow. This is a book that I didn't even know existed when I saw it on the book outlet. Probably most known for his book Darkness at Noon, which came out in the late 30s or 40s about the show trials in Stalinist Russia. It's Arthur Koestler, and this is called The Sleepwalkers. Did anyone know this book existed? This is The Sleepwalkers, a history of man's changing vision of the universe. And basically what it is it's a history of our ideas of the cosmos, astronomy. It takes you through, ancient Greek and Roman ideas of where we are in the cosmos, the Middle Ages, Galileo, Tycho Brahe, Copernicus, all the way up through the present day. A nice chunky book too, well over 500 pages. Never knew that he wrote a book on the history of science, basically. I thought he was not just, that's I don't mean it in a pejorative way, but I thought he was just a novelist. Someone I have an odd relationship with. This is Edmund White, The Unpunished Vice, A Life of Reading. It is essays, some of his essays on books, and The Bookish Life. By the way, if anyone wants my opinion on the best gay novel, Edmund White is gay, by the way, ever written in the 20th century, and I guess probably 99.9% of them were written in the 20th or 21st century, go get Edmund White's novel, which is, oh come on, The Beautiful Room is Empty. It's the story of him. It's part of a trilogy, I think, of him growing up. And The Beautiful Room is Empty is the first part of the trilogy. Tells about him growing up in the 50s and early 60s. And it is a stunningly beautiful book. If anyone's interested in gay fiction and wants a recommendation. Alright, two more really incredible finds that I was lucky enough to get at a market discount, I think. These are usually on the order of $25, $30, $35 in good condition if you want to buy them even used online. This is the Landmark series. This is the Landmark Arian, the Campaigns of Alexander. And of course, if you're unfamiliar with the Landmark series, one of its sort of coming attractions are the maps. The maps that so often when you read ancient Greek and Roman history, you have to either be flipping back and forth between maps of where you're reading about, or just sort of have a map in your head of, say, like, you know, um, the southwestern portion of the Peloponnese or something. And of course, every American today knows what that looks like, right? But this is great. Copious numbers of maps, big print, great paper, side notes too that explain unusual terms or names. Just super, super lucky to have found this, and it kind of makes me want to go and buy the others that are out. They are coming out with at least one more this year, and possibly another one late this year or early next year too. I think they're coming out with Polybius's Anabasis, which is going to be something to look forward to. And I found another landmark series too. This is their Thucydides. So as long as you can suffer that, which I can, if it means I get to save 2/3 of my money, a little mark isn't going to bother me. So. And this goes back to my interest in medieval Spain. This is Matthew Carr's Blood and Faith, The Purging of Muslim Spain. Here's a sort of a cultural, intellectual history of St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, A Cultural History by Solomon Volkov. I've heard this recommended to me a number of times, no less than 2 or 3, by people who are, relatively well read and smart, who say that it is the best book on the subject that they know of. This is The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes. Quite a big 800 plus page book, but lots of fascinating history, and hopefully they get a little bit into the science too. I know they have to keep it popular, but they also had the making of the hydrogen bomb, which is another book, also by Richard Rhodes, a separate one, which I, for whatever reason, ended up not getting, probably because I already can't say a no to a lot of this stuff. This is a book I think probably everyone on BookTube will recognize. It's Andrew Roberts' biography of Napoleon. Was absolutely thrilled when I ran across this at the book annex, library annex. This is The Road Since Structure by Thomas S. Kuhn. Thomas S. Kuhn, if you're not familiar with his name, wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution in the early 1960s, I believe. It's one of the best and most cited books about the philosophy of science in the 20th century. And this is a book of essays that he wrote after that book, sort of in answer with it, criticisms of it that he answers, and just generally how the book was received after it was published. I think Kuhn died sometime in the 90s or so. And the book includes, there's the guy himself, Thomas Kuhn, includes conversational pieces about how the book and how it was received all the way up until the end of his life. This is, excuse me, Let me get something to drink. This is Men on Horseback by David A. Bell. The Power of Charisma in the Age of Revolution. David Bell is the Sidney and Ruth Lapidus Professor in the era of North Atlantic revolutions at Princeton University. And the book is supposed to be about how charisma is deeply connected to the concept of leadership, and how that how that's historically changed over the course of the last, since the French Revolution, so roughly 230, 240 years. This is a book of essays by Eamon Duffy called A People's Tragedy, Studies in Reformation. Also very happy to find this next book because of the fact that it finishes off a trilogy, two of which I already owned. So this is volume 1 of the Cairo trilogy, kind of talked about around YouTube. This is Palace Walk by Naguib Mahfouz. Kind of referred to, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature in the early 1980s, kind of referred to as the Balzac, the Egyptian Balzac of the late 20th century. Have not read any of it, but now I have a reason to start because I finally found volume 1. This is, I know next to nothing about World War II history other than maybe, what I learned in middle school and high school. It's really not something that has interested me, but I know that Rick Atkinson is generally a pretty trusted name. I've heard Peg mention him several times. And this is Guns at Last Light, the war in Western Europe from 1944 to 1945. The problem that I have with a lot of World War II history is that it tends to be strictly military history. Military history is really hard for me to... It's hard for me to keep my attention with it. I love diplomatic history. I love the history of ideas. So how tensions start internationally and diplomacy and stuff like that, that catches my attention, keeps my attention. But as far as the nitty-gritty, here's what Battalion 107 was doing on March 13th at 2 p.m., that's not really my jam at all. But I thought I would pick this up and give it a try and see if it scratched any itches for World War II history. This is another Peg, the last one. It's also the second to last book. So Peg is picking up these volumes by Sidney Blumenthal. The volumes that are coming out, his massive Lincoln biography. And this is volume... Is this 2? I'm not quite sure. It's either volume 2 or 3. But it's going to end up being, a 2,000, maybe 2,500 page Lincoln biography. And I thought, okay, why not? He's Sidney Blumenthal has obviously dedicated much of his retirement to writing this, so I'm on board. And last but not least, this is Volume 3. I should probably check it just before, yeah. It's hard to believe it just came out last year, but I got Volumes 1 and 2 as soon as they were published years ago, but they're both in paperback. This is a hardback of The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. Unfortunately, Volume 1 and 2 are in a box somewhere in my shed. So I don't have ready access to them, and I'm not really in the mood to rebuy them. So a read of the Mantel trilogy will have to wait for now until I either move or get motivated to go digging through the shed. But anyway, those are the 40, 45 odd, who was anyone keeping track? I don't know. Books that I have to show you. At the end of October, there's going to be another book sale that promises to be a little bit bigger and hopefully a little bit more exciting than the one a couple of weeks ago was. When I go, and if I get more than a handful of things, I will show you. And if not, I'll just sort of incorporate them into the next big video like this that I do. I will see everyone next Wednesday. Bye.